Hello and welcome to God Logic. My name is Temko and today we are taking a look at a game called Lumo. What is Lumo, you might ask? Well, it's a isometric puzzle platformer, and don't click away just yet because this game does break the trend of current day puzzle platformers quite a bit. So before we dive into gameplay, I'm going to go run through some options and settings and talk a little bit about the game. If you do not want to hear or see that, just press the annotation on screen and you will go straight on ahead to the gameplay section. For the rest of us, let's dive a little bit into some settings. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is controls, because this game controls like a bloody brick. I'm using my Steam controller and that works absolutely fantastic, but the mouse and keyboard controls are abysmal. They're lovely, but this game does not like them at all. As such, they were discarded for the use of a Steam controller, which works fine. But if you're planning on using a mouse and keyboard for this, I will definitely discourage you from trying the game at all, because it will negatively impact your gameplay experience extensively. Now, graphics wise, the game has 3 presets for laptop, desktop, and rig. I'm not sure what any of these mean per se, but you can customize each and every one of these settings quite a bit, including VSync on RAW for an FPS being locked to 30, 60, or unlimited. It's locked to 60 for this recording, but the game runs at around 300 FPS. Otherwise, on my GTX 780. All the options you might expect are here, no complaints at all. Now, there is a complaint I can level at the game because it does not have windowed mode or borderless windowed or anything like that. It only has full screen mode, and that is definitely a negative. Controls are rebindable, for the keyboard at least, and not for the controller, which is often the case with games. Now, the game doesn't actually have controller support that I have seen, but it does work fine with the Steam controller's default setting. It does detect it, and there's no issues whatsoever. The game is also coming out on a variety of other devices, so controllers in most situations should work fine. The game runs well, and there is no issues with crashing or anything like that. It's just that the controls on mouse and keyboard are absolutely abysmal. There's also leaderboards and a variety of other things, like the world, myself, my friends, etc. So you can compare yourself to everyone else. If you're wondering, why does a puzzle platformer need leaderboards? Well, let's go ahead and some gameplay, and I'll talk a little bit about that and showcase why this game has leaderboards and what this game does different compared to some of the many other puzzle platformers. Let's go ahead and dive into a new game. I have a game ready to go. I've pre-recorded that segment, but I just want to showcase to you. Now, you have adventure as well as old school mode. If you are into figuring everything out, finding all the dozens and dozens and dozens of secrets that are strewn throughout the levels, collecting collectibles, etc., then adventure is the game to go. Unless you are really masochistic, then go with old school. And if you die, and you will die repeatedly, then there's no save game and you have to restart. And that's the way it is. So if you're masochistic, old school. Otherwise, adventure. The game also lets you select your control scheme up, down, left, right, or halfway sideways, which is pretty usual for isometric games. Now let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay and I'll show you the rest. Now, the game has a bunch of rooms. There's over 400 of them in the game, and each room has a series of things. Some rooms are just corridors that don't really do anything, and other rooms are a variety of puzzles, hazards, pickups, and places you have to go back and forth on. Now, what the game starts is, you're this little guy, and you have to figure out how to get out of this magical dungeon. The game unlocks a variety of things. It starts you off without the ability to jump, and then grants you the ability to jump twice your own height. Later on, it unlocks the ability to be faster, longer jumps, and it unlocks a firefly staff where you can shine light and see invisible objects, and so on and so forth. This is just the gameplay progression. The actual idea behind the game, though, is figuring out secrets, collectibles, and finding out cool stuff in the world. Now, there's 14 levels in total, and there are 400 rooms or so. And there is a myriad of collectibles, and there are tons of secrets to figure out. Not just secrets in places like, oh, this is a magical secret, here I have an achievement. No, shortcuts, different ways to complete an objective, different ways to find collectibles, even entirely different ways to access lower levels are available as secrets. Bypassing certain mechanics completely is possible using secrets. It is really cool. Now, what is the game all about? I honestly couldn't tell you. The story is very abstract. It doesn't really have any shape or size to it that I've noticed, and it's mostly an excuse to stomp it full with a million references to old school gaming in the 80s and 90s. The developer even says so on the Steam blurb and in the press release information. That is a nod and a wink to the players that grew up with games in the 80s and 90s and all the various tropes that are part of that genre. So you'll pick up cassettes and you'll pick up memory cards of 1 gigabyte and stuff like that. And the game plays pretty well. But there are a couple of things I would like to mention. I've already talked about controls, and I can't stress that enough. Currently, my biggest frustration with this title is the control scheme. Now, I'm not really used to using a controller, so this may be part personal preference because I don't really like using controllers, and this may be part of the game. But on the mouse and keyboard, because of the digital directional movement, where you do not have the omnidirectional key to move around, playing this game was near damn impossible. For one thing, the movement is slanted sideways, which is a normal situation for many isometric games, and the control scheme doesn't really allow for that. Now, having a control scheme up-down, which is possible, the game allows for that customization, doesn't translate well to the vision you see on the game. Maybe that's just me, but I had a lot of trouble with that. Slanting it, on the other hand, is again very confusing because you're using WASD to perform movement and you have very little control over that. So that is very, very frustrating. Another thing that I find really frustrating is even with the controller, the vision reticule, which is basically your shadow on the ground, is not that clear. There were many times where I made the jump thinking I was gonna make it for sure and then hit an object. There were dozens of times when I was certain I couldn't do something and it was well within reach, and so on and so forth. The control scheme of the game is by far its weakest point, and translating those fine-tuned controls into the medium of isometric didn't go that smooth, and gave me a bit of a sour taste playing the game. Even though the puzzles were interesting and the mechanics were cool and everything looked great, I had a lot of issues getting the game to behave the way I wanted to in a consistent fashion when playing the game. Again, some of this may be with my lack of familiarity using controllers, but the keyboard and mouse were definitely a much worse experience. So there is that. That's also one of the only things I have bad to say about Lumo. The game is developed with a clear vision in mind and with love and care. The soundtrack, while not to my taste, is very well executed and fits great with the game. It has sublime tones, it has over-the-top tones, it changes based on certain action and criteria. The little cutscenes that are showcased every time you pick up an object, or every time you unlock a new secret, or anytime you get something interesting, are really cool. They fit real well into the game. They're thematic, they're not over the top, they're just a little bit cutesy, and they're a little bit of a nod back to the ages of old for older gamers that this game is aiming at. Now, the game markets itself as a game for young and old alike, though I'd like to contest that statement a little bit. This is 100% a game for a more younger audience, and vice versa. It's a game for people that really enjoy exploring puzzlers. Why do I say that it's a bit for younger people? Well, aesthetically, it's a very simple game, very bright colored, and it doesn't have a lot of complex mechanics. To call this game a puzzle platformer would be a little bit of an injustice to puzzle games, because the puzzles in this game are never actually complex. There has not been a single puzzle in any of the levels that I've come across that I didn't see the solution to directly. Doesn't mean there were no interesting challenges, far from it. The secrets, the variety of collectibles, and the optional things you can gather and get are quite challenging in such situations, requiring me to try time and again to get them done. But this doesn't detract from the fact these puzzles are really simple, clearly aimed at a younger audience. Now, all the references in the game are 100% aimed at an older audience, so I'm not sure how the idea behind the developer is to mesh that left and right, but I have to say that the variety of secrets and options the game has included, many secret rooms, many secret passages, ways to jump outside of a level, on top of a level, and so on, are really cool and do provide a interesting mix of gameplay elements to players who are into the collection and gathering aspect of completing a title. Now, if you're not into that sort of thing, if you are not interested in finding out all the secrets, if you're only interested in playing the game, getting to the end, getting a victory screen, and turning the game off, then this might not be the game for you. Because the gameplay that you will experience in that situation is simple, very linear, with puzzles that are not complex at all, that provide little challenge, and while it's definitely interesting and it has a abstract and pretty funny story, in the game, you will not find much satisfaction. The satisfaction from this game 100% comes from figuring out the various secrets, extras, and collectibles in the title. And if that's your sort of thing, then this game might be right up your alley. Now, the game is coming out for a price point close to 20 euros. I think it's coming out for 18 euros, which is a pretty steep price for a small little indie title. Because for me personally, after a few hours of gameplay, I felt I had seen everything the game has to offer. Doesn't mean it doesn't unlock new features later down the line, but I mean that the features and unlocks are pretty expected and nothing new or phenomenal. You get a little bit jump, then later you get a staff that creates light, but you'll still be doing the same jumping puzzles, you'll still be dodging the same areas, and you'll still be doing the same little 2 or 3 mechanics the game uses. Because again, it is aimed at the younger audience, as such they have to keep things a little bit simpler. So overall, a very clear presentation with a good audio skill, Lumo provides an interesting bit of gameplay for younger audiences. Not a bad thing at all, but it is aimed at that for sure. The game does say it's also aimed at the generation of gamers that grew up with the games in the 80s and 90s. And while I can see the appeal of that, and the game has a ton of secrets for those that enjoy that, I find it a bit of a stretch to call the game exactly aimed for that sort of gameplay, with its very simple gameplay, not aimed at adults in their 30s and 40s at this point. Whether or not you find the game worth close to 20 euros is up to you. Personally, I feel the game is a little bit light on content, and in certain situations, some of the bugs I experienced just made me a little bit wary. There's not a lot of bugs, but some of them are pretty annoying. None of them stop progression, but they do break immersion. So overall, Lumo is a very solid puzzle platformer. Not without its flaws, but very solid nonetheless. And you can check it out on Steam. The game has a lot of secrets and a lot of exploration to offer, but it doesn't have a lot of complexity to entangle the gameplay. So thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press the like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that. And leave a comment. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what we can do better. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button and we will deliver. I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on Guy Logic.